Last time I saw you, we worked on two parts to our landscapes. We created tints in our sky by mixing one color with white. We also created the middle ground, which is our mountain area. And eventually these will get cut out so that we can see the sky more naturally behind our mountains, but we're not going to do that today. Today we're going to work on the foreground, which is at the front of the painting, and we're going to create kind of a main street cityscape at the front that will kind of layer in front of our mountains to be the bottom of our artwork. Today we're going to be using Art with Miss E's Winter Village drawing guides, some of the pages from this pack. And we're going to use these to help us with some different architectural inspiration for the different shapes of buildings and roof lines, windows, kind of textures. And these are going to be a guide. So don't feel like you have to copy these exactly. You can look through them again to kind of borrow parts and pieces and even combine one with another. And if this is something like in her drawing guide, it's the bakery, you could use the building but turn it into something else. If you don't want to have a bookshop, it could be the library, or it could be a toy shop, or it could be a candy store. So feel free to borrow the shapes that you see and make it your own. Today you're going to get to use two different drawing media. You're going to get to use metallic markers as well as colored pencils. You want to use a little bit of both. They're both nice because they show up nicely on this black paper, kind of like our buildings are in silhouette because it's nighttime. And if you can look at mine, you see that maybe a lot of the outlines of the buildings and like big windows and doors were made using the markers, but then there's lots of smaller details that are made using the colored pencils. So I would say outlines of buildings should maybe be bold and thick using our markers, and then smaller details should be made using the colored pencils. When you begin your drawing, you want to start at the very bottom of your paper. We're going to do the buildings that are closest to us first, and then we'll put the other ones kind of layered in behind them. So across the bottom of your paper is where you want to begin. Again, you could just start very simply and just draw rectangles and squares, or you could look more at this Winter Village drawing guide to kind of get an idea of maybe different buildings you could do. We do want to use variety so that sometimes different heights and sizes, widths, and kind of skinniness of our buildings can make things look interesting. I wouldn't worry about drawing too much in pencil first. I would just trust yourself and go for it in marker. Remember that most main streets have buildings that are connected or touching each other, or at least that are very close to each other. So try to have your buildings touching or at least very close to each other when adding them side by side. Once you've finished your first row of buildings across the bottom, remember that typically as things move away from us, they get a little bit smaller. So I would make your second row of buildings a little bit on the smaller side, just to kind of help with that illusion of space, that they are a little bit farther away from us. Remember the concept of overlapping. We draw to a shape, but not through a shape. So make sure that your buildings are coming down and touching the top of your first row of buildings. Once you have all of the big stuff drawn with markers, all the buildings mapped out, kind of the outlines and the windows, then it's time for the magic to happen. Then you're going to go back in with your smaller kind of colored pencils and really start to add in those details that make it unique. Remember that just because the drawing guide said that it was a bookshop or a pizza place, you could make it into whatever kind of restaurant or store. It could be a toy store, a candy store, but here is where all of those kind of magical elements will come into play, adding in lots of details. Remember that these are supposed to be winter kind of themed villages, so you want to add in some details that help us to know that it's winter time. So that could be that you add in small details that represent maybe the holidays that your family celebrates. Keep in mind that these smaller details really do work best being done with a small colored pencil. If you need to sharpen your colored pencils, you're welcome to come up to the pencil sharpener to get a nice fine tip to be able to draw nice small details. You could also add in like a yellow color to the windows to kind of give the illusion that some of the lights are turned on. This is the fun part, so really make sure that you're having fun with it and thinking about all the different individual details that make your buildings or your main street unique. While we've been drawing mostly just the outlines of the buildings and windows and things, don't be afraid to go back and add in some small details like textures. Think about what the buildings could be made out of. They could be made out of bricks or stones. You could add kind of the texture for the shingles on a roof. All of those little details add up to make your artwork really interesting and dynamic.